We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness.
And now New Galaxy Broadcasting presents Inalienable and Free, Voice of the Coalition, a program addressing the grave challenges to human and citizen rights in America and the rest of the world. How can we, the people of Earth, take back the power and privileges granted to us by God and addressed so significantly in the Declaration of Independence? Our rights are inalienable, that is, given by God and incapable of being taken away from or given by another. These rights are the basis of liberty, the foundation of all life and happiness. The Coalition of Planetary Empowerment is an organization designed to give its members tools and information to empower them personally, in relationships and in business and employment, but also to give them a voice and the ability to help transform political and corporate governance to support the true needs and desires of people throughout the world. Inalienable and Free focuses on the need for government and corporate business interests to be responsive to the will and desire of their constituents and consumer shareholders. Good morning, world. My name is Johnny Bluestar, host of Inalienable and Free, Voice of the Coalition. I am joined with my friend Don Newsom, who helps produce the show and who is an owner of BBS Radio, the station I am privileged to broadcast from. This show is titled Recipe for a Perfect World, a Geopolitical Perspective, Part 2, Remolding Our Priorities and Institutions on the Road to Peace. In our last show, we dealt with the necessity of ultimately outlawing the doctrine of mutually assured destruction and the weapons that support that doctrine, including nuclear, chemical, and biological weapons. Further, now they have been created, and there's a history of scientific research that has stood behind this fearful experiment since the Manhattan Project. Once these weapons have been destroyed, we must create an ever-vigilant policing force to continually monitor the world to make sure that these technologies remain extinct. Further, we saw the value of creating a whole new class of major weapons that focus on capture, not kill or maim. Now, although non-lethal weapons exist, they're often not used, and the ones that exist sometimes are quite dangerous and rather useless in military engagement. Well, we covered a lot of ground last time, huh, Don?
We sure did, yeah. We covered a little bit of ground. It's not easy to cover too much ground in an hour.
Yeah, but at least we covered getting rid of all the nuclear weapons and WMDs.
Right.
The thing about it is, it's really hard because envisioning the future beyond disarmament is really difficult when you've lived your whole life under that shadow of nuclear weapons. But that's what we're going to talk about today.
That sounds like fun.
Now, total disarmament and its consequences sound like remote possibilities, like I was saying, like science fiction. But maybe, didn't science fiction accurately forecast so many things we're seeing emerge today, like submarines, airplanes, spaceships, supercomputers, robots, intelligent machines, communication devices with video, and so on? And as far as far-off changes of doctrine over a period of 2 centuries, haven't we seen the abolition of slavery, the growth of women's suffrage, the destruction of laws against segregation, the expansion of voting rights, the protection of minorities, this rise of unions? Although we are in steady retreat of having a government that upholds these rights, acquired from the beginning of the first day of our independence to the beginning of this new millennium, were these not a remarkable flowering of the ideas and wishes of so many dating back to the founding of our country? Still, in order to outlaw the mutually assured destruction doctrine and all its associated weapons, you must have a body of law to do just that. To do that, we spoke of either reforming the United Nations or creating a new world government that will allow these weapons and create a working plan for total nuclear disarmament. With 169 countries that have signed a treaty saying they wanted to outlaw nuclear weapons, it's a little bit of shame that none of the nuclear weapon countries signed it,
Yeah, there seems to be something a little nefarious about it all, doesn't there? I mean, when you look at what happened in Japan, and then you look at TEPCO and the way they've handled it, the way their government's handling it, And the way it's continued to be shuffled under the rug like it's no big deal is the biggest tragedy of all. And is this likely to continue to occur? Well, yeah, you look at these radiation maps, you see the radiation of the planet continually increasing. You see radiation doses of millions of sieverts in just California and other areas along the coastline especially. It's a disaster, and these technologies that utilize it are just enriching a few people while truly messing up the land.
Well, Trump is eager to get more nuclear reactors going and to continue on pushing forward.
Yeah, you almost have to until you get enough people that agree that we should do away with this, and the countries agreeing to do away with nuclear armaments is a great start, but it really needs to be like you and I were talking, a global situation, because
it has to be.
It has to be, right? So the only way to remove something like that is a likely world government, like you're saying. I mean, there has to be some instrument that can actually do that on the global stage.
But we don't have to. Listen, as I'm no expert on this, Don, you can tell me, but I understand a lot of our nuclear reactors are sort of like Fukushima's.
Right. Many-time bombs.
And now, if you have that going for you, are you really going to not directly act on that, knowing the incredible damage that has done? It's
our politicians are idiots. I mean, let's be real. These people, we see them. Look at what's going on. It's a comedy show. It's a damn comedy show. And I mean, to expect anything out of these freaks is just about damn near impossible.
Yeah. So
I mean, look at the British Parliament as well, and Canada as well. Although they're not so as bad, but the British Parliament is just a bunch of pansies and dandies walking around stealing everybody's money and lying to them, and just straight out lying to them. And our government's not far behind that. I would have to put it, say that the U.S. to a lesser degree is so sick, but the UK has shown us absolutely what corruption does.
Yeah, well, it's hard to measure to compare these two different countries, because our country is so much more massive and is so much more powerful in a certain way. But all the roots of everything that we do is kind of related to them.
Well, if you look at the UK, they seem to want to establish something like China in their own area. They really do, in their own continent. They seem to love the Chinese model, and they want to emulate it. They've, shutting down reporters, jailing them for whatever reason, no reason. And literally telling the people, we don't have to tell you shit. And that's that. And when it comes to the Queen, if you delve too far, we're going to lop your damn head off. That to me isn't, the whole barbaric British Parliament and, the way the Chinese have been establishing the social credit system. And other countries, South Africa is having its problems, and I mean, we look in the Middle East. It's just this is a shit show that's put on for real by a few malignant characters, and it's tragic. It's tragic.
Well, I want to go. You see, the purpose of the paradigm is to be able to envision something good. And that it's hard to believe, but I do believe that empowering people who are spiritual to experience what God wants, what's revealed to them, because this is not this scenario that we're seeing is not a revelation from higher powers. It's a revelation from lower powers, right, in these different countries.
Right. Well, these community, again, when it comes to setting up councils, setting up our own juries, citizens hearings, and citizens arrests, I think that's a fabulous idea. I mean, get a dozen or more people, 13 people together, and start handing down indictments and publishing it and helping it go viral, but literally holding our own courts and bringing these people to justice.
Well,
because if the people don't, I don't think the government ever will. I mean, look at these people running around the halls of power. They get away with everything.
Well,
everything.
That's why we have to empower people to vote, because if you set up citizen arrests, well, they have to be kind of approved at a certain point. But you can't set up your own courts and punish people.
Yeah, you can. Yes, you can. And it's being done all over the country. I mean, all over the world now in various countries where citizens are doing exactly that.
You couldn't do it in this country, put somebody in jail or punish them without that's a false imprisonment. That's against the law. That's a serious thing in this country.
Right. Well,
Yeah, so I say that what we have to do is empower voters to take over their municipalities and take over their counties and take over their state governments and take over their federal governments, because you've got too powerful a sort of killing machine that's operating here.
Yeah. Well, true.
And the only way that we can do this is by actually obeying the Constitution. And the reason that we're in this state is that people did not do it. They don't vote in primaries, and therefore the people who are elected are, in general elections, usually are Republicans and Democrats, because a handful of people show up at these primaries. That's what's got to be changed. I think we have to work with the system. We have to work with it in a very serious and aggressive way. And we have to get the right people on every level. And I think particularly local. There should be citizen groups that discuss what they should do. And they don't necessarily have to be Republican and Democrat, but they should develop their strategies for bringing the right people into this country, into the government of this country. But let me go on here for a second. Okay, Don?
You got it.
We were talking about, as part of the plan for total disarmament, it's unfortunately critical to remember that these arms are held by 8 nations: the U.S., England, France, Germany, Israel, says it doesn't have any or it won't admit it, India, Pakistan, and Russia. In order to prevent any one of these nations from going rogue in the middle of disarmament, I'd recommend that a powerful defensive shield with the most advanced technology should be built simultaneously to protect each of these countries, and its technology be initiated at precisely the same moment, so that the real actions for total destruction of these weapons can proceed under the watchful eye of the WMD policing agency we've spoken of before. The destruction of these instruments of war will also include the destruction or removal of all toxic materials associated with these weapons. So I'm saying that, okay, we have to disarm. We better develop a defensive shield around these countries.
Right, but can we truly trust the world as it is? Even, let's say you get a world military police, and they do this. Well, I'd still be frightened that one sicko group is going to, be sequestering away nuclear technology and would use it on a first strike basis, considering everybody else has been disarmed.
Well, a first strike basis would have to be a serious amount of weaponry. I mean, we're not talking about a dirty bomb here. We're talking about something that's pretty extraordinary.
Right.
And yeah, that's a problem. But the other problem is that we'll all be destroyed by just a computer error, if not by, isn't it clear that all these people that are in power cannot be trusted?
They can't be trusted
to do something wrong. So I'd rather try and get it. First of all, these defensive shields would be developed by these defense departments. The policing agency would be another agency. This would be have to be a massively
What do you think about our Space Force? I mean, that's kind of an interesting way to use one of our aeronautics corporations, NASA, our military and start creating a space force.
Well, what I propose in here, and we'll discuss it later, is something like that. Because I want to turn the defense industries and the defense departments of different governments to the aim of the colonization of planets and space travel, as well as totally cleaning up the environment with the help of private companies.
Right.
I mean, just getting rid of nuclear waste. Okay, so that's what I propose here. But you have to have a technology that could do that. We don't have that technology, although I've seen,
I believe we do. I've
seen claims for it, but I don't think
sound technology. There's quite interesting information on new sound technologies that can actually abate some of the radiation. But then everything ultimately is sound, isn't it? So
you have to destroy you have to absolutely neutralize the radiation. So I think I've heard examples of that, but it's like other great technologies. It's possibly completely hidden and
mushrooms,
suppressed.
The mushrooms supposedly and various types of bacteria now can help remove it that they found in the Chernobyl inside the old reactors, things like that. That there are technology. It's kind of like cancer. They don't want to cure it. They don't want to get rid of it. This is helping depress and depopulate, and is fitting right in to their design. So, are they really going to get serious about cleaning up anything, stopping this tragedy, or even?
No, they won't.
They won't
unless we the people take charge.
Right.
If we take charge, it's possible.
It's possible, but
it's possible because of the primary situation and because of there's a lot of people who are upset, but unfortunately, there's a lot of people who just say, "Go ahead, do all these things, and it's fine with us," and are actually for it. Anyway, I want to take a break here for a second. We're gonna play a song soon, Don. It's the following song is from a rock group called the Bouncing Souls. Their name is a kind of punk rock pun taken from the slogan of Don Martin's shoes, a favorite and accepted staple of punk rock attire. The slogan is Don Martin's shoes with bouncing soles, spelled S-O-L-E-S. The group Bouncing Souls is spelled S-O-U-L-S. I'll make a further comment about the phonetic word soul. Soul, the phonetic Kabbalah, did you ever hear that expression?
I haven't.
It's not known by many people, but it means that in certain words can actually correspond in different languages by their sound to very suggestive meanings. As an example, I'm going to give another example here, but Argo, like the star Argo. Now, there is a word argot, which is like the secret language. It's spelled the same way. It could be in French, I believe it's pronounced argot. So it's a secret language. It's a star. Then there's the two words archo in Greek, which means the art of light.
Interesting. I remember a movie with called Argo, wasn't it? Argo?
I'm not sure.
No. Argo, F yourself. And then there was a movie by that. I forget, a pretty big actor played in it. Maybe it wasn't named Argo. He just kept saying Argo.
They're the Argonauts with Jason, who they were the ones chasing the Golden Fleece, which is sort of an alchemical symbol. Well, in this case, soul in Latin means sun, right?
Right.
Often a symbol of God. But the word soul, S-O-U-L, means a person's individuality, sometimes considered a piece of God. But it also sounds like the bottom of a shoe, a soul. It also means one or many, the one God. So here in this one little word, you have heaven and earth, the mundane and the sacred. They're all blended together in a way fascinating to the people who are interested in this phonetic Kabbalah. So, incidentally, I got the term phonetic Kabbalah from an incredible book called The Mystery of the Cathedrals by Fulcanelli, who's an alchemist. And he gives an example about archo, but it's more complex than that. The Bouncing Souls on these songs feature Greg Atonito on visuals, Pete Steinkopf on guitar, Brian Kienan on bass, and George Rebello on drums. Kalasu Wintergate, also known as Kalasate Swami, someone who's also married to her musical partner, Johima, is Greg's mother-in-law and a prodigious musician. She suggested this song to me. We'll be presenting the Kalasu and Johima's band Lightform in future programs. I like this song. It's about two people in love who stick together, trying desperately to create a better world. The lyrics of the bridge say, "We got to keep on trying, even though our heroes are dying. It's up to us. It's up to us now. We got to keep on trying, even though our heroes are dying. It's up to us now. It's up to us now." And this is the song. So we're going to play this song in a second, followed by a short message about New Galaxy Enterprises, my content development company. So that's N29 and C2.
My company, New Galaxy Enterprises, is a California corporation specializing in the creation of media and promotional content. We are focused on original, innovative projects that are good for humanity. These projects could be nonfiction books or novels, fictional screenplays or documentary content, websites and website content, commercial advertising content for print, audio, or video products on the internet, television, or radio, musical scores for advertising, television, or film, video, audio editing, etc. We want to promote products and projects that support the environment, encourage a healthy experience in living, developing, nurturing, and useful technology, and offering platforms for positive, socially constructive entertainment or informative, transformative media. Our experience in creating a variety of products like this is rather vast, and we offer client-based and collaborative products, as well as the opportunity of active investors to join us in the creation and promotion of proprietary products, some of which are in latter stages of development. For more information, go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. That's www.newgalaxyenterprises.com. If you're interested in talking to us, just fill out the contact sheet and we will get back with you.
Well, anyway, I thought that was an interesting song, didn't you?
I liked it. It was very interesting.
They are officially kind of punk rockers. They started out that way anyway. And we're going to be hearing more from them and some other really interesting stuff later on. Wow. Well, so anyway, using defensive warfare, let's say we got this going, will certainly save many lives and reduce the horror of war. Let's say we could develop weapons that don't really just kill and maim, but that you can capture people. But none of this will mean very much if we start to warehouse prisoners without accomplishing some kind of change in our methodology. We need to have new protocols for interrogation and rehabilitation. Unfortunately, the idea of interrogation and treatment of prisoners has been severely injured by the actions of the Chinese during the Korean War, which were largely replicated by the U.S. after 9/11. The terrible things the United States did to prisoners during the war in Vietnam and the work of black op organizations like MKUltra, and of course the use of torture and human treatment at Abu Ghraib, Guantanamo, and black sites throughout the world. So I don't think that's the protocol we should be looking for, but we still have to deal with it. I believe that certain cases with a court order, in the instance, for instance, of a potential immediate terrorist attack might occur. Some kind of technology could be used that will not do physical or psychological damage or utilize pain to permit a alleged terrorist to disclose facts he might not disclose normally. I'm not talking about an MKUltra drug or technique that is used in the careless and brutal way our prisoners have been treated in Guantanamo and elsewhere. So in my experience, that if you have an idea and that has a righteous and positive purpose, then the golden muse of technology will sometimes step down on the doorstep of these capable of perfecting it. The problem is that there are less positive muses of technology, and they've been stepping on too many doorsteps. Dark technology, which carries an enormous price for its use, has seduced the wealthy corporations of the world to invest in planticide, which means suicide for a planet. In normal conditions, there are plenty of interrogation techniques that can work quite well, but beyond using these types of techniques to convict somebody of a crime, the goal of a prison for prisoners of war or for civilian lawbreakers needs to be far from punitive, but geared towards the prisoner's education and rehabilitation. Prisoners also should be able to be trained to work in prison areas customized to their talents and abilities, not treated like slaves of the state. And today, so many of our prisoners subject to the cruel sentencing created during the Clinton administration should not be jailed at all. Many of our enemies are basically graduates of sophisticated, often religious-based indoctrination programs. They should be understood to be capable of being deprogrammed, to use a somewhat archaic term, and research should be developed to create protocols which will challenge their beliefs, all the while giving them alternatives. So what do you think of that?
It sounds utopic in some respects. Having some sort of instruments in place that could work well in those situations might be asking too much.
Now, come on, total disarmament followed by international policing force, following by changing all our weapons.
That again, I like the concept of it. If you could trust the people behind the power, right?
They can't be. this can't happen unless a real large number of people are transformed, not only from being good people, but being people who are empowered to politically act.
I agree.
So yeah, this everything I'm doing now, recipe for a perfect planet is it's based on very far off paradigms. I know it is. I know that you can't implement hardly any of this immediately, but you could start to empower people. And if they're really good people, what choice do they have than to choose alternatives for so many things that are different than the way our national and international governments are set up?
Right. But where does that, another thing, though, with these countries, where does that end? Where does that power end that we cede over to a foreign body, or let's say an external body? Where does that?
I think it's like looking at, there are arguments about what are states' rights and what are like.
Right, you get into a whole bunch of weird areas.
Yeah, you're going to get into those questions, but it's basically like that. I think that maybe the states are not as differentiated as they were originally, just by virtue of communications and changes in their specific, agrarian economies and all that. But still, in all, I think there's a real market. There is.
I mean, the one thing we have going for us is the respect that everybody can communicate now. Like you're saying, times have changed, so we know our neighbor a bit more than we used to, even though we don't get out as much. I mean, we're all connected information-wise to each other on such a vast mass scale that if we are gonna do something like this, these are the times to do it.
Well, first of all, there are certain environmental situations that obviously cross over. I mean, like Fukushima, we can't have certain types of technology being used. Or if we have certain types of technology, whatever it is, good or bad, it has to be monitored, and there have to be rules governing it if they're going to hurt other countries. So I would think
maybe
that's
we have a buyback system, like the gun buyback system. We have the IMF and maybe the World Bank, and if they really wanted the world government, like they say, why don't they say to the United States, "Hey, we'll give you $5 billion per bomb." For a nuke bomb, right? We'll buy them back, and then
except they're the people who are behind creating the bombs.
Right. That's what I mean. It gets to be kind of jokey.
It can't be done that way. It can't be done. It's absolutely right that you've got to start with really small groups, municipalities, counties, states, or whatever corresponds in different countries, because you've got to have local. The strength has got to be.
Right. Well, that's where these citizen hearings, courts, and assemblies make sense. I mean, I know a lot of people don't like the InfoWars, but it was brought up there. I thought it was a great idea by a pretty intelligent fellow. I wish I could remember his name, but this is something he was discussing at length. And same with Here We Stand with Reverend Kevin Annett. His program's on tomorrow at 3 p.m. Station 1. Good program. He's actually helping other countries from Canada, the U.S., European countries, and so on to actually learn how to establish these assemblies, councils, meetings, and bring justice back to the people. Put justice.
But see, we already have those things. The trouble is that they've been taken over by the wrong people. We have the structure, which is now they're denying every aspect of it. Like the Constitution, they're stripping away the meaning of it. But we have it. We have it. That's what the great thing is. We actually have it. And if we can take it back, we have something to build on that has worked a lot.
I agree.
See, and that, but it's like, what are we going to do? We arrest somebody and we imprison them? What's going to happen? These people who do that will be put in prison.
Well, it'd be interesting to see how this plays out, because what is happening when these things are starting is it brings a lot of media attention, a lot. When people actually take it upon themselves to go to that extent, it becomes media worthy. So it garners so much attention, like when it comes to some of the crimes that have been going on with, church and state, it's now coming full circle in that these people are starting to be held accountable. The people are wanting answers. They're demanding it. These things are going viral, and changes are taking place in the internal, in the internal back rooms of these power-hungry groups. They really are. Groups that have been using the glue that sticks government together. Pedophilia is a blackmailing tool. And child trafficking as a blackmailing tool, and other things they use as a tool.
It's very scary.
The people can find that information, bring it out to these assemblies and citizens' juries, and really start to gain a lot of attention and awareness.
Well, you can do what you can do.
It might not work, but if you
what you can actually do is you could have these assemblies. They could meet. They could do investigations. They could. There's a lot they could do in terms of that, and they can arrest them. They can arrest them right now. There's nothing.
They just can't do anything after that. That's the problem. Once you arrest them, what do you do with them? Well, then you have to. Now you're skirting the law, aren't you? Because now you're holding somebody.
No, you're not holding them. You turn them over. But then again, you put a lot of pressure on the local or state, whatever judiciary, because they're getting so much publicity.
Right.
And at some point,
and that by the way, is a great way to start. That's a grassroots understanding. Those sovereign ideas are great.
And the publicity, though, the publicity is what these people who are in power are afraid of, because if they are connected to these things, they're not going to be voted in.
Right.
They don't support them, they're not going to be voted in.
Right.
And also, you have the recall possibility. So if you have a bunch of people and they're organized within an electoral context. I don't mean that. I don't mean they're necessarily going to be voting, but they could vote. You could have them actually create, like they did in California, a recall, and you could recall everybody. As far as I know, I mean, on many different levels of government, certainly federal, certainly state, and probably local. So you create recalls, and so you don't have to wait for the election.
I like it.
That's a powerful tool.
It is. Right. I agree. Then again, if you had Mensa groups, citizens Mensa groups, that formulated these plans and started to bring them to action, things would start happening. And believe it or not, that's what's going on. People have gotten fed. Many groups have gotten fed up to the point they're doing exactly what we're doing, discussing it and how to go about changing it. And they are. They're making serious strides. It's going to be an interesting world how this thing plays out over the next couple decades. I think we're going to see that culmination everybody seems to want, whatever that is.
In the coalition that we're trying to create, the infrastructure, people who are from various groups that are interested in the same thing can come in as individuals, and they can form an initiative that might be from 3 different organizations that agree with each other, and now you might have 10 or 15,000 people writing to the individual they want to influence.
Right.
Well, let's see now. Well, for the next segment, I'm going to get a little bit personal, Don. I'm going to have, for me, it'll be a little fun, but I don't know. Because I'm going to talk of something that I've truly loved since I was a little boy, namely space travel. Were you ever hung up on that?
I was, of course. That's kind of how I got into this when, originally on Dr. Fred Bell. He used to tell me he worked on the downcraft propulsion systems, and he'd always try to explain to me how they worked. And I thought I'd get it at one time, and then it would fly by me the next. But I always have thought about that, dreamed of it. I've seen crafts. Always wished I could get aboard one. I'd love to be aboard one. Never have. And I've seen him fairly close, and I've seen him do some interesting things. But no one ever, opened up the ship and said, "Come on in, let's go for a ride."
Well,
yeah, I got to tell you, space travel to me is something that, I mean, if I could be an astronaut tomorrow, I would.
Well, you see, I was born a long time before you, and so I didn't have the advantage of thinking that anything like these extraterrestrials. I didn't know that there was a crash. I didn't know that until many years later.
Some people say there was three. There was three that night.
Yes.
Yeah.
Like the Aztec one.
Pardon me?
There was one, I think it's called the Aztec crash, that supposedly happened at the same time.
Right. They were able to cover up two of them pretty good.
Well,
but they were able to cover up, yeah.
But I'm going to go back into the past now, because I'm going to briefly go into my obsession about it, although I'm bound to omit many elements. So as someone who went to second grade when I was 7, around 1952, I grew up in the 50s and 60s, roughly corresponding to two very great things, space travel and rock and roll. I also grew up on the cusp of television, gradually taking over radio as a source of drama and adventure, so much so that various 1950s television and radio programs featured both. I never played with model airplanes or toy cars. What I always liked were rocket ships. Let's play M30. This is a big influence on my life here. Let's see if you've ever heard of it.
From the rocket fields of the Academy to the far-flung stars of outer space, we are space cadets training to be ready for dangers we may face. Up in the sky, whistling fast, higher than high, faster than fast, out into space, into the sun. Look at her go when we give her the gun. We are the space cadets, and we are proud to say our fight for right will never cease. Like a cosmic ray, we light the way to interplanet peace. From the rocket fields of the Academy to the far-flung stars of outer space, we are space cadets training to be ready for dangers we may face. Up in the sky, whistling fast, higher than high, faster than fast, out into space, into the sun. Look at her go and we give her the gun. We are the space cadets, and we are proud to say our fight for right will never cease. Like a cosmic ray, we light the way to interplanet peace.
One key part of the Tom Corbett franchise, which included television and radio programs, a series of children's books, a comic book series, and a lot of really cool toys, was the Space Academy set, which included spaceships, Academy headquarters, various dome-shaped, really cool futuristic buildings and launching pads. I used to lie on the floor and play with it for hours, unlike my electric train set, which I did have, but I played with for minutes. Then there was one of the great disappointments. Buzz Corby and the Space Patrol was a show on both radio and television, I believe. It was advertised by Wheat Checks and Rice Checks, and these fabulous early sci-fi promoters told us, it seemed to address to me personally, that if I bought the cereal, I'd be able to actually see a spaceship land, say, on my neighbor's roof. And when I heard this, I imagined it was some kind of miniature but powerful projector that could project a three-dimensional images at a distance, sort of like a hologram, but I never heard of the word before. Can you imagine my excitement as I opened up the box and then found the secret at the back of the cereal box? It was a black and white image that if you stared long enough and looked at the wall, the reverse image would appear. Let me tell you, if I was old enough to formulate an appropriate response, I would have contacted or even formed the Consumer Fraud Bureau that very day. I struggled with slipping into severe depression. I wanted so much to put some kind of spaceship on my various friends' house. But anyway, would have been a good Halloween once done too, but no, it wasn't real. But there was a program called Rod Brown and the Rocket Rangers that kept me going. This wonderful program sent me a Rocket Rangers membership club form so I could sign up all my friends in the neighborhood. so they could enjoy the thrill of being part of this elite organization, a boon to keeping peace in the galaxy and the rest of the known universe. M31.
Zooming past into the black we race, rocket rangers all, roaring past, blazing a trail in space. With pride we stand, never to fall. Thundering on, ready to fight for right. Let the rockets roar. From the sands of Mars out to the distant stars, we're the Rocket Ranger Corps. Zooming past into the black we race, Rocket Rangers all. Roaring past, blazing a trail in space. With pride we stand, never to fall. Thundering on, ready to fight for right. Let the rockets roar. From the sands of Mars out to the distant stars, we're the Rocket Ranger Corps. From the sands of Mars out to the distant stars, we're the Rocket Ranger Corps.
Like a very important part when I was in second grade, there was another show that I really loved, probably my favorite, and that was Flash Gordon, starring Buster Crabbe. This was a movie series that was made 1936. There was 3 of them till 1940. I don't know if any more were made, but they were later broken up and made into television movies or little chunks of it for television programs. And that really excited me, to Buster Crabbe. Here's a short clip from Buster Crabbe's third movie, often called Flash Gordon Conquers the Universe. In this clip, which is a lot of visual content, unfortunately, I'd like to show it to you, but I can't right now. Flash Gordon, Dr. Zarkov, and Dale Arden and some companions are taken prisoner by the Rock People, where they encounter some prehistoric giant poisonous lizards on the way to meet the king, who turns out to blame them for his son's disappearance. I just want to give you a little feeling for this. So let's play SP10.
There. Ate him.
Oh, Flash.
Broker.
Come from? Where are you?
What is he trying to say?
He wants to know who we are and where we came from.
What language is it?
It's an ancient language spoken by the lost tribes that once inhabited the Gobi Desert on Earth. Your friends. We are...
Our king.
We're going to be taken to the king.
Why are we prisoners, Zarkov?
I think they're blaming us for that explosion.
Oh, we shouldn't be held responsible for that.
We go. Come. You're going down! Look!
Don't move. We're safe from the monster if it doesn't see us. Call it an Iguantian. Even the blast of its breath is deadly poison.
Reason we dress like rock. More easy to hide. Iguantian.
He says the reason they dress like rocks is to protect themselves against these monsters.
Come back here!
No wonder they call this place the land of the dead.
Now, we go. Highness.
Where is my son?
Your Majesty.
What are they saying?
It seems they're blaming us for the disappearance of the king's son.
But they can't do that. We had nothing.
The king's son has failed to return since the explosion, which apparently caused a serious earthquake and did a lot of damage.
Suppose his son doesn't show up.
In that case, our lives will be forfeit.
Oh, but that's not right. Torch caused the explosion.
You better try and make that clear to them, Zarkov.
Zog is to blame. That man we have not harmed. We are friends.
Why do you stand there like fools?
But your majesty!
Take them to the cells.
He's coming too.
Yeah, this was very primitive, right? It was a long time ago. But actually, if you watch this 1940 clip and some of the other clips from way back, they have extraordinarily great ideas and some great visuals, considering that this is way before all this digital paraphernalia came up. I could go a long time about this, but I'd like to show in a strange way, how this should shape my future and an important component of my life as an artist in various venues. So I will flash forward to 6th grade in North Merrick, Long Island, where I was asked, along with others in my class, to write a short story. My story was about alien abduction, long before alien abductions became mainstream. I never heard of an alien abduction, but I wrote about it, and it, in conjunction with some girl who wrote a story about a carnival, were combined together to be the story of a play, not just any play, but a musical. And so me, the girl, and some other people would meet together with the art teacher and the music teacher and write the book and songs for the musical. And believe it or not, this play actually was produced, and I went to see the finished product with my parents. The aliens looked a lot like monkeys because I guess they couldn't find any other kind of soup. But anyway, it was only years later that whatever shaped my unconscious mind to attract this extraordinary opportunity so early in life would be components of a creative obsession that would dominate my life later on. Now, before I tell one more story about my sci-fi childhood, I need to tell you something strange. After 3rd and 4th grade, I went to a summer camp in New Hampshire. During that time, I have a very clear memory of standing with one of the counselors and some other campers watching a comet-like fireball pass overhead, perhaps something like a quarter mile above. It looked like a small comet, but I think it would have been unlikely that a small comet would come that close. It was more or less on a parallel trajectory to the Earth. I believe the council dismissed it as a meteor or something quite natural. I don't remember seeing it land, just watching it overhead. I'm not sure if it really happened, but I remember it distinctly, or so it seems. After my first musical production in 6th grade, I changed schools. And in another contest in English class, I wrote a science fiction story called The Fireball from Arkle, another alien abduction story, and possibly based on my so-called memory of that fireball when I was younger. I thought the name of the planet from which the fireball came, namely Arkle, was strange. Later on, long after I won that contest, I won a contest to see Cinerama, the first Cinerama that ever existed. And because of my bad behavior, they wouldn't let me go. So anyway, I won the contest. But so later on, way before the internet, I found a book by a man named William Arkle, who wrote about various metaphysical subjects, including out-of-body experiences. That was the only time I encountered that strange word years later. And I still don't know what it meant, but it was strange. Did you ever hear of anyone called Arkle?
I haven't, but what a strange coincidence.
Yeah, it was strange. And then but I continued to be obsessed with science fiction. But later on, after I left college and embarked on a writer and fine art painting career, I began a book on rock and roll and the consciousness movement. This was in the early 70s, particularly in relations to acid rock and the meditation music that grew out of it. I realized at the time that besides writing about rock and roll, I wanted to be involved directly in creating and playing rock and roll. Right after that realization, approximately 10 songs came to me with melodies that spelled out a kind of story, suggesting a musical. Although some strange things happened to me, even as a totally musically unskilled person, this was extremely unusual. It happened so fast. In other words, I got these words and melodies together. And I'm still working on that musical.
Isn't that something? No, I truly get it. People that have various experiences often end up with knowledge that seems to just come to them on things that they really have no wherewithal about, or I hear stories about that every now and again. I think it's incredible. Yeah, that's something you should really follow up on. I'm trying, believe me.
Right now, there's a song that came to me. This song came to me. It's called "And Love Shall Know," and it came to me as a whole. And anyway, I was working with two girls who had a band. They were very good. And I brought them the score sheet. I had a score sheet made. And one of the girls looked at it and started to cry. And I said, "Whoa, what are you crying for?" She said, Marilyn and I were in a car, this other girl, and we heard music, this beautiful music. And we wanted to hear it a little better, so we started to turn it up on the radio, but it wasn't on the radio.
Weird.
And this was the music. Wow. And then Marilyn said, and later on, I was taking a bath and I heard that music again. And again, instinctively, I reached for the radio. And then, of course, the radio wasn't there. So they heard it twice. Now, finally, I paid a long time ago for this music to be done. And the person I paid was someone I work with all the time. And he didn't really like it. And he didn't do it. He didn't do anything about it. And finally, I got him to do it, and he told me that it was one of the most incredible songs he ever heard, but he never understood it until now. And right now, Patricia Welch, who works with me, is going to be doing a
you
version.
Got me curious now. I want to hear it.
Well, it's not done yet. But anyway, you will. You'll hear it.
It sounds pretty groovy.
Well, we'll see. But now, years later, I decided I wanted to create a science fiction film franchise. That was before the Star Trek and Star Wars commercial film franchise had started. In fact, Star Wars came out when I was almost finished with getting everything ready. I had even talked about my idea at a Star Trek convention to Gene Roddenberry. I told him, I want to do this thing called Ganymede Jones, who at this point was running around to different conventions. Remember, Star Trek got canceled, and then there were these conventions. Don, do you remember this?
Oh, yeah.
And they became famous again.
Right.
Oh, man, that is such an interesting story, I swear. It's just, there's a book by William Shatner, and after this, he was divorced, and he was missing his children, but he didn't have any money at all. He was broke. Star Trek, William Shatner, right afterwards, he was totally broke when they canceled it. And he had to drive around in this truck, and he would sleep in the back of this truck. And he had a miniature television, that he could put. And so when the moon landing came, he was sitting there watching the television, and this kid came up to him, wide-eyed, "Captain Kirk, is Spock there?" No. And he realized that something had happened, like there was something strange going on, that this kid would recognize him and so forth. And yeah, the whole thing started to blossom after that. But this was before any of the films, and it was after the TV show was canceled, and he was just driving around.
Wow. I tell you, I love that actor. I think William Shatner is one of the greatest.
Yeah, me too. I mourned when I saw The Next Generation.
Yeah,
but anyway, at this point, I wanted to do a science fiction series myself, and I wanted to be a science fiction character. For me, it was like Flash Gordon. I mean, that's what started it anyway. But I knew I loved Star Trek. Oh my God! At this point, so Roddenberry told me, go get an agent. You know, they always say that when they want to get rid of you. And I had agents, and I was sick of agents. So I decided to make my own radio series, a rather archaic idea for the 70s. But I thought I could create a short 10-minute series and maybe give the genre a boost. And at the same time, prepare, just seed the ground here, the cheapest way to do it. And this became the greatest effort of my life. And I explain this more in my website, New Galaxy Enterprise. But we had costumes and we had weapons and we had all sorts of promotion for this little thing that we were doing. And so I want to, in a second or two, I'm going to give you a cut from the first series. It was meant to be somewhat comic and overdramatic. I could not have done it without a person named Morgan Fleming, Leo Chandler, and his wife, Mary Ellen Smith. But I will say this about Morgan. When he finished working with Ganymede, and he was in both series, later on he became a jeweler. And he started with very little. His father had been a jeweler. He had a few things, and it was really like tempting for him not to do anything about this because it seemed so stupid. But then he said, I remember how I did this, how I started something from nothing. And so I began to start this. And he's now an established jeweler. So so it was good for something. Anyway, here's a clip from an early pilot that was recorded with the help of Sonny Gray, a jazz musician who owned a studio specializing in teaching tapes, and I just owe him a great deal. Leo and I, now that's another thing, Leo Chandler was in prison for life, because, and it wasn't like he wasn't the sinister guy, but he just like, it thrilled him to hold up Safeways with a gun. And he was arrested 3 times for it, and he was in jail for life. So Jenk Jones, who owned the Tribune and the Tulsa World and the Tulsa Tribune, went to McAllister prison for other reasons. And a guard said, you ought to see what's going on downstairs. And you ought to meet this guy, Leo Chandler. And Leo was teaching other prisoners how to paint. And he saw his work. His work, honestly, it was incredible stuff. And he was so impressed by this, he went to the University of Tulsa and talked to a friend of his who was the director of the art department. And together, these guys petitioned the governor. And the governor, they gave him a scholarship, but he couldn't go to the art school, the University of Tulsa, because he was in prison for life. So it was a little awkward. But they petitioned the government, and he got a pardon. He didn't get a pardon. He went on parole. And I met him shortly after he got out, and I talked to the first person who interviewed him was named Mary Ellen Smith, who was a great person. And they fell in love. The first person he interviewed, and they got married. And I worked with both of them. And
wow!
Yeah, it's extraordinary. And it's of course a very complicated story, but basically what he did with us is we went to a carpet place, and we found remnants in a disposal area. We took these remnants and we built it like a studio with the soundproofing, and we got some really crummy stuff from a pawn shop, but Leo was very handy and he fixed it. And so we had a studio, and from that studio we made a pilot. And from that pilot, we got into one of the best studios in Tulsa. It was a teaching tape studio by a jazz musician. We had original music, original sound effects. You could do anything with the studio. And later on, it went from, I think, 8 tracks to 16 tracks in the next one we did, or maybe even 32 tracks. But at any rate, this is what we did. So I'm going to tell you, man, it's kind of primitive, but I like to play it for people because it is like, it has heart in a certain way. So here goes, SP8, the pilot.
On July the 15th, Ganymede Jones will become radioactive. KMOD radio. Active.
In the 31st century, the Interstellar Alliance ruled all explored space within the Milky Way galactic system. The ISA was a military confederation of planets held together by the fear of an imminent invasion from Beta Hydra, center of a vast and unfriendly civilization. Only this threat held the Alliance together, for man still hated his brother, even though he built his home among the stars. This was the world that Ganymede Jones vowed to change, as he fought for freedom and justice in these strange, disturbed times. The New Atlantis Theater Company presents The Adventures of Ganymede Jones on the outskirts of space.
The world of the Interstellar Alliance was a world of war. It seemed that man could not keep himself from the twin temptations of pride and greed, and so plunged himself and his brothers into a nightmare world of technology run amok and ambition unchecked by conscience. With all the problems man had wrought for himself in the 31st century, he was now also heir to an invasion from a distant stellar system, Beta Hydra, so that he who could not contain himself in peace was now forced to contend with an enemy from the stars. These clashes raged on and on until it seemed man had finally begun to win the battles with the Hydrican menace. Many of mankind's warriors were now returning home, exhausted by their wars in deep space. Among these was Ganymede Jones, captain of the starship Dogstar. His ship has been severely damaged. In a sudden change of orders, Ganymede is directed not to land.
Captain, this is urgent message from Command Control. Your orders have changed. You are now on Black Sky Alert. You are not to land under any circumstances. Do not land the Dogstar. Black Sky Alert. Repeat, do not land the Dogstar.
Shut the frogmouth off, Nick. Jojo, what chances do we have if we stay up here?
Ganymede, if we stay up here, there's going to be a great fireworks display for Pluto base, and we're going to be the Roman candle. There's no chance, Ganymede. If we stay up here, we'll be dead in 20 minutes!
Screaming sky sharks! I ain't blown up this ship because they got some kind of Uncle Scrooge complex. I'm taking this baby down.
But that's a violation of a Starbase directive.
What about the base, Jojo? Is it in a bad jam if we land?
Oh, I hate to say it, Ganymede, but I don't see how they could give us this order. I think it's worse for them if we explode up here. Sure, we might do a little damage in our landing, but Black Sky? No way, Ganymede. It's ridiculous.
Well, that cuts it for me. I guess we're gonna have to land.
You know what that means?
I'll cross that bridge when I get to it. Start getting ready. Everybody get settled. Jojo, flip on the fuel conversion charts. Okay, Mick, hit me with the monitor.
I'm with you, Captain.
Thanks, Mick. Get ready, everybody. We're gonna hit dirt side real hard. As I was saying, we're not getting any tugs. So buckle up, everybody. This is gonna be a slammer for sure. One engine is out. The ship may wobble. Our gravitational controls look like the labyrinths of Venus. You medic units, strap everybody in. Code E. Repeat. Code E.
Captain, this is the engineer. One of our shields is slipping. How much time do we have left?
No time. We're going down. Now.
Gyroscopic malfunction.
Try the attitude control jets.
3 of them are out.
How about backups?
No response.
You have your orders, Captain. You have a Black Sky Alert. Do not land the Dogstar. Repeat, Black Black Sky.
I thought I told you to shut that space jockey off.
They're using the radio beam.
Then override it, damn it.
Captain, quick. Come here. I think they're setting up missiles down there. They're fixing to blow us out of the air.
You're right, Mick. I'm beginning to wonder if we're dealing with our friends or some kind of enemy. There's something screwy going on down there, all right. The ISA never acted like this before.
The Dog Star begins to vibrate at an alarming rate. On the ground, the ambulance units hold themselves in readiness, according to ISA ordnance, even though they know the entire base may shortly be destroyed. The radio directive has filled the Dog Star with reverberating echoes, but Ganymede holds firm. He points to his left video unit.
You see that control tower? They left it. I'm going to use it to stabilize our roll.
They're not going to like it.
They'll like it better than having us spread all over Pluto base.
I don't understand what's going on. Someone down there really doesn't want us to land.
Who needs them? I got 300 men here. Begin descent.
As the ship descends, the wobble increases until the vibration makes the ship appear as a gargantuan, shuddering mirage.
Everything's coming apart. I feel like I'm inside a tuning fork.
Check the spider jets. Jojo, do you read me?
They're okay, Ganymede. We're gonna catch hell for this!
Well, that was it, man.
I love it. No, that was great. It? No, that was perfect. That was really good. That reminds me of some of the old-time radio.
That's what it was supposed to. It was supposed to have a sort of
nostalgia.
It was supposed to be nostalgic. It was supposed to be funny. It was supposed to be
great. It was all those things. It really was. Well done. Well done.
Well, thank you. That was. It got more sophisticated later on. We did a lot more to make it more sophisticated.
I would love to see that in a series.
Well, yeah. Well, it was a series. It's actually 2 different series, but yeah, we'd have to redo it. I do hope to someday do that.
That'd be a great project. I love it. Well done.
Thank you. Well, let's play C-15 and B-1.
This is Johnny Bluestar, CEO of New Galaxy Enterprises, a media content development company. If you need an audio ad for your website, AM, FM, or satellite radio, please contact us. I personally created simple voice spots, elaborately produced ads with original voices and music, and longer infomercial ads for various clients, radio stations, and my own talk shows and dramatic radio series. We stress a combination of creativity and powerful marketing ads, often involving the rotation of various ads during a campaign period. To learn more about New Galaxy, see samples of our work, or talk to us about your project, please go to www.newgalaxyenterprises.com and fill out the contact form.
Boots in Manhattan is a coming-of-age novel by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. It is about a young Tom Boots Raymond who grows up in New York in the 1940s who was a member of a street gang.
My friends and I were about to start our own game of stickball when Rabbit Lacey, the head of the Rattlers, came up to us and tried to move in on our game. We were called Dwarves, the youngest members of this stupid gang.
Hey, Kevin, I need you to get some gloves and some stuff I left at my place.
No, this is our game.
Hey, are you my good little dwarf or what?
You've been calling me a dwarf since I was 6. We're not your personal slaves, pal.
Hey, what is this? A dwarf rebellion? All right, big guy. We ditched the dwarf thing. We make you guys regular rattlers.
No, it's too late.
He looked at Jay and me. We looked away. Rabbit was now angry, and he pushed Kevin hard with the palms of his hand. Kevin tried to ram him in the stomach, but he stepped aside, throwing Kevin into the curb where he fell to the ground, bleeding profusely at the knee. Still, he managed to get up.
My street.
Kevin shouted at Rabbit, pointing at him with an angry index finger.
Find out more by Googling Boots in Manhattan, a 1940s coming-of-age novel, part 1 of the novel series The Foot Soldier by Ray Boylan and Johnny Bluestar. Google with the words, Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle. That's Boots in Manhattan, Ray Johnny Kindle.
These days, we talk a lot about the dangers of unchecked immigration, and over the last few shows, we've offered an interesting paradigm for international border communities in conjunction with another paradigm for cooperative trade zones. Part of the problem is going to be a growing problem, and that is overpopulation. When it comes down to it, you hear extreme alternatives like those offering depopulation scenarios engineered by certain nefarious members of the elite. And then, of course, there's the planeticide offered by geniuses who oversaw the creation of ever more destructive nuclear weapons, justified by the amazing mutually assured destruction scenarios which pass for deterrence through massive destruction of everyone on Earth. And of course, there is the do-nothing dangers, possibly by ignoring many of the world scientists' conviction of rampant dangers of climate change. Personally, I think we're meant to overpopulate, part of our nature, so that we'd be ready to move on to our next level of existence, which Elon Musk calls multiplanetary. Do you think we should be multiplanetary, Don?
Absolutely.
Yes.
Of course, I think we're probably in small respect that way already, but we're not being let in on it.
Well, I'm frankly skeptical about the degree of
well, to the degree, very, very small degree. But I actually believe we have built structures on the moon. I believe that. I think it's been done in a clandestine way, but I think we have put structures up there. And as far as Mars, I tend to believe that we have something started there, but I wouldn't know what it is. It's just I kind of fall into the fancy that everybody else does. If we've got orbital satellites looking in on the planet, it makes sense that we could put stuff on the planet. And, I think there's a lot more going on already that we don't know about.
The private space program claims are so vast,
right?
Like, for instance, that we have already very sophisticated starships that go back and forth in different galaxies, and there's all kinds of factions in them. I don't know what to think either, but I tend to, in this case, think that there's a lot of disinformation going on.
Oh, no doubt.
Maybe importantly, to disguise what they do have. Because look, this is what bothers me. They really have what they say they have. Why are they screwing around with oil? Why? What do they care? So people have only been the only answer I've ever gotten about that. In other words, if they have the technology to clean up the earth, turn it into a beautiful place, and all that. Why are they trying to strangle us with oil?
Well, it's a good question. Knowledge is power, and it seems like they've been sequestering history and information and old relics and old bones of giants and things that don't fit into the narrative. That's been done by various institutes and foundations, have been destroying that information or sequestering it.
Yes, they're destroying our history, right?
Right, and if they can do that and keep us in the dark about our true history, what can't they do?
What I'm saying is, if they can do that, if they can really do all these things that these private space,
well, they do it probably. It's kind of like originally we were built as slave labor. Well, you need people to create the funds, the energy necessary for these things to occur. Unfortunately, again, it's our money, but we're not let in on it. But,
well, what I'm trying to say is, I'm not talking. I agree with that. Okay, well, what I'm saying, but if they really had all this technology about going to the stars and free energy, what they don't need any slaves. They don't need anybody. They could help us go to different planets.
I don't know. You'd still need a workforce. Nothing beats a good workforce.
Well, they don't need slaves because they could take real good care of them.
Right. But I don't think they think like that.
I know they couldn't think like that. Yeah. Whatever's really be done, they couldn't. But I don't think they have that advanced technology. I think they have some. But I don't think it's like that, because if it was like that, they'd be so stupid to waste their time in making slaves when they can make robots. They could do all kinds of stuff. Why would they bother?
Right, and well, you know, I see your point. Yeah,
they'd have to be really stupid to worry about. Oh yeah, let's meet at the Bilderbergs and let's make it an alliance with the. Let's get the Yemen thing settled so we can get their resources, and you know, I just think it's.
Well, when you've heard about all the pyramids and the new pyramids that we're seeing on in the poles of the planet, and various underground pyramids that we're able to see through new technology, we rarely hear about anything. Any of the relics.
They probably existed.
Right.
You know, those things existed, and there was probably a very advanced.
Right, that's probably a lot of where our sci-fi and these ideas about space forces and everything come out of. They become fanciful ideas that kind of pop out onto the stage. But do I feel some of it's real? Yeah, I'm kind of like you. I think they've gotten a lot farther than what they're telling us, but they're not so far as they've got some space force and they've got some elite command up there, and you know, I don't.
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly. I mean, they the way they talk about it is it's just
it's a little weird.
It's things like, okay, you got injured, so we'll just clone you. That's what we'll clone, and I've got cloned 10 times already. Anyway, let's listen to what Elon Musk thinks about making life in multiplanetary and 73.
If you look at things over a broad span of time, the things that are less important kind of fall away. And if you look at things from the broadest possible span of time as it relates to life itself, and the evolution of life has been, primitive life, I think, started around 3.5 to 3.8 billion years ago. And what are the important steps in the evolution of life? And obviously there was the advent of single-celled life, there was differentiation to plants and animals, there was life going from the oceans to land, there was mammals, consciousness, and I would argue also on that scale should fit life becoming multiplanetary. And in fact, I think consciousness, it's the next step, actually, because you really kind of need consciousness to design vehicles that can transport life over hundreds of millions of miles of irradiated space to an environment that they did not evolve to exist in. You know, it would be very convenient, of course, if there was another planet just like Earth nearby. But that's unlikely, and as it turns out, not the case. I think if one could make a reasonable argument that something is important enough to fit on the scale of evolution, then it's important. And maybe worth a little bit of our resources. If it's something like 0.25% of the GDP, that would be okay. I think most people would say, okay, that's not too bad. You know, it's. But you know, you don't want it. You want it to be some sort of number that is much less than we spend on healthcare, but maybe more than we spend on lipstick. You know, something like that. And I like lipstick. It's not like I've got anything against it.
So NATO gets together with other different groups throughout the world, and they say, yeah, I know NATO wants 2% of the defense budget, which is a lot. That's great. But let's all get together, all of the countries in the world, and create this incredible space force.
The things we could do as a world if we decided to get together and do it. Yeah, amazing things. I'd love to see something like this, a united. You know, that might be the ticket instead of climate change as the tax ruse. Maybe a global space force and tax the countries, and they all go into some international. They build an international space force, kind of like International Space Station, but you know. I wouldn't mind something like that, because if you're telling the people honestly why you're taking their money and they get it, like with climate change, a lot of us just don't get it. There's too many lies, too much bullshit, too much geoengineering going on, and a lot of money going into those projects. So it's hard for us to believe what's being told to us. But if they were to literally say, hey, okay, we're going to build an international space force and all the countries have to, we're going to tax a tiny percentage of the country's GDP to build this, yeah, I'd be in.
Well, the interesting thing is that the songs I told you about, that I got 10 of them, the story is about the people of Earth being challenged by the nuclear situation at the time, in the near future, decide that they're afraid that things are going wrong and they want to have their own way of getting out. So they put together an organization called the Stars Belong to Everyone Corporation, and they raise money from private people in order to develop this stuff. And something like that has been going on. I think it has to do with Mars, where they've been raising money to go to Mars. But anyway, this was long before that. This was in the 70s. Yeah, and the stars belong to everyone. The best things in life are free. Here we go. We're going to listen to Elon Musk's actual plan to colonize Mars in 72.
Earth-Mars synchronization happens roughly every 2 years. So every 2 years there's an opportunity to fly to Mars. So then in 2024, we want to try to fly 4 ships, 2 of which would be crewed, and 2 of which two cargo and two crew. The goal of these initial missions is to find the best source of water. That's for the first mission. And then the second mission, the goal is to build the propellant plant. So we should, particularly with 6 ships there, have plenty of landed mass to construct the propellant depot, which will consist of a large array of solar panels, very large array, and then everything necessary to mine and refine water, and then draw the CO2 out of the atmosphere, and then create and store deep cryo CH4 and O2. Then build up the base, starting obviously with one ship, then multiple ships, then start building out the city, then making the city bigger, even bigger. You send the spaceship up to orbit, you retank it or refill it until it has full tanks, and it travels to Mars, lands on Mars. For Mars, you will need local propellant production, but Mars has a CO2 atmosphere and plenty of water ice that gives you CO2 and H2O, so you can make therefore CH4 and O2 using the Sabatier process, becoming a multi-planet species. Beats the hell out of being a single planet species.
That's great. So anyway, in a world that finally removes its WMD weapons and decides to practice cooperative trade and handle the problems of refugees with compassion and intelligence, what should we do with government defense department and the defense industries that support them? How will they survive if they can't make nuclear weapons, silos, submarines loaded with nuclear missiles, and millions of guns, bombs, mines, grenades, etc.? I know. Let's retask them to work with private industry to clean up our air, water, and oceans, and at the same time, let us see them either develop or release their hidden methodology for faster-than-light travel and get to work on learning how to accurately terraform new planets.
I love it.
Thank you. We can start with Mars, but be ready to take off for new planets and new adventures. And maybe at long last, I can apply to the real Rocket Rangers if I can find enough people on my block to sign up.
That and find your helmet.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Don. We're going to start moving out. I want to thank you for joining with me today and
always
your
a pleasure.
Continued help. Yeah, you've done. It's just been. I can't tell you. It's such a boost to work with someone you can talk to and interact with about stuff like this, and even sometimes argue.
Well, I love it. I just really appreciate being on your show. I wouldn't have it any other way. You're just fantastic. And to your audience, hey, thanks for listening to me chime in. Appreciate it. And we'll likely catch you next time. And thank you, Johnny.
Well, we also want to thank you, brother, because he has shown so many different multiple advantages of working with BBS Radio and helps us also in all the minute things we have to do. Of course, we want to thank Hassan Khan. He helps in all things related to New Galaxy Enterprises and BBS Radio. Linda Mystic Healer and Andy Miller for supporting Inalienable and Free, the voice of the coalition for planetary empowerment. And now, Don, we're going to, we're going to give our official goodbye, followed by a beautiful version of Evergreen. You know the song Evergreen? You remember that?
It rings a bell, but I'd have to hear it to be sure.
Yeah. Let's listen to it together if we can.
You got it.
Anyway, this is Patricia Welch put together a whole bunch of songs based on decades from like the 40s to the 60s and early 70s, and this is one of her songs in her set. Anyway, in recognition of our future ability to redeploy our defense resources to utilize faster-than-light travel to visit and terraform some extra space for our ever-expanding multiplanetary population with room enough in an infinite universe, we are going to have Ganymede Jones remind you of our collective mission. So we'll play 3 this time, INF Extro, the M32, and then for a final goodbye, SP9.
Thanks for joining Don Newsom and I on
Inalienable and Free, Voice of the Coalition. As we go about developing our new organization, the Coalition for Planetary Empowerment, we hope you will consider the importance of taking part in the electoral processes of your government and asserting the rights you have to vote for the companies you respect and love by casting your ballot as a shareholder or as a consumer with what you buy. We hope soon to make this possible through a social network responsive to your needs to dialogue about your rights as a citizen, but also to be able to effectively act in concert with like-minded colleagues who find representatives of government and business executives who will hear your voice and appreciate your message. See you soon.
fresh as the morning air. One love that is shared by two, I have found with you, like a rose under the April snow. I was always certain love would grow. Love, ageless and evergreen, seldom seen by two.
This is Ganymede Jones. Imagine a dark night. The wind is crisp and cool, the sky cloudless and majestic. Perhaps you are walking alone or with a loved one. Scattered about the night sky are thousands upon thousands of brilliant points of light. Look above you, friends of this restless planet, out into the night sky. Unknown worlds await, beauty beyond imagination, intelligence beyond comprehension. Life in its infinite forms and variations, yet all from the same seed, the same fundamental vibration. A cosmic tapestry of infinite life, yet each thread unique and indispensable. Look above you, out into the vastness of the night sky, for your destiny lies out there, somewhere among the stars.